I'm here to talk to you about ornamental grasses today.
There's warm season and cool season grass. Does everyone know that? Warm season and cool season grasses? It's in there, but it's because like panicum, for example, is a warm season grass. So in the spring, everyone's looking at their landscape and going, why isn't my panicum growing? It's because it really needs the heat. The ground needs to warm up a little bit for it to start to grow. So that's why when you're planting grasses, you have to know that, because you have to mix them in order to have. I'm big on four seasons of interest. If a plant doesn't give you 4 seasons of interest, then why have it? You know what I mean? It has to look good in the spring, the summer, the fall, and the winter, all of them. And if they don't, it's just not going to, you're not going to be happy with it. And grasses can do that, even though they go dormant in the winter. Do y'all have like a window that you can sit in your kitchen and look out in the winter? So if you plant grasses out there, you'll be amazed at what's sitting there in the morning is like when you watch the grass just growing back and forth. And grasses are, in my opinion, are one of the only plants that can provide movement, sound, and what you see in the garden. Because when they move, they're not dry. I wish they were dry. You could hear them move, and it's really it's just something about it in the winter. The color that they get, the golden color. I'm real passionate about grasses, in case you can't tell. And I wasn't always that way until I realized how important they are in the landscape. So as long as you understand that there's warm season and fall season, warm and cool season grasses, you can have a landscape that really provides interest for all 4 seasons. The winter's just as important in the garden as the spring. Most people will go out, they'll just cut everything down, prune everything, and call it winter, you know. And then, but don't you want to enjoy it a little bit in the winter too? You know, isn't that important? So grasses will give you that. Conifers, we all know evergreens and things like that do that as well. But grasses, even though they go to sleep, still provide you that. So now, I guess the important thing we should do is talk about, and I'm going to organize these just a little bit. These are native grasses. They grow here naturally. It's a shame we sell plants so fast here. You could see what this would really look like if it had the seed heads on it. It's northern sea oats, Jasmanthium, and it gets these. This is why I wanted to walk, because there's a Jasmanthium growing out there that I really wanted to show you. So anyway, this is a really cool grass, in case you don't know this one. This is Schizocarium, so little blue stem, and it's on there. This you can see growing in the meadows and open fields here. It grows naturally. So this is the blues, and there's another one that we just didn't have in stock called Standing Ovation, and I want to talk about that grass because it's important. So this grass, if you fertilize this grass, it will not be happy with you. This particular grass likes to grow in lean soil, like no nutrients whatsoever. And if you can provide it with that, this is the opposite of everything we know about plants. You know, every plant, this does not. And if you feed this grass in the fall, when it starts to do what it's doing now, raining, these things will just open up and they'll fall down, and they're not as beautiful. Its cousin, Standing Ovation, however, is a newer variety, and it will stay upright. As you can do whatever you want with it. It's so beautiful because it stays upright. The color that's provided by these in the winter, in the fall, is amazing. If you can picture a large clump of all that color, I mean, there's 3 different colors there. There's green, there's red, and there's blue. That's the other thing that grasses can provide for you is color. When nothing else, this really starts to shine in the fall when it starts to take on its fall color. So this is little blue stem, and it's got a cousin called Anthropogon that's called big blue stem. So there's a new one of them out now called Blackhawks. And I wish I had some. We sell plants so fast. Next time I'm just going to buy a bunch and bring them in here so you can all see them. But if you want to write that one down, if you're interested in native grasses, that's a good one. Well, there is a trick that you can do with grasses. It's kind of like a double trick. So if I were to grow this, because it'll get, if this were the soil line, it will probably be about this tall. If you take a string and you wrap it around the base of the plant, maybe 3 or 4 inches up, it does keep it from doing that. And you might not see the string. Use natural green string and you won't see it. But
So little blue stem is shorter
than the big blue stem, its cousin, the Anthropogon. Yes.
So
Yes.
It's about 3 feet.
Well, this grows about 18 to 24, maybe a little bit more, 30 inches. And big blue stem grows a little bit more, 36 inches maybe, but the real difference is the size of the leaves. So big blue stem is going to have a wider leaf. But back to your question, if you're going to grow it in a pot, it's fine. No, just keep it lean. Like don't feed it. You don't have to worry about that. This does not want that. They use this sort of grass when they're reclaiming mine sites and they want to draw, the heavy metals and things that are left over. That draws them up. But you don't want to feed this thing. It'll just get I was about to say it'll get so healthy that it'll fall over. And that's really what it is. It'll get so healthy, so happy, it'll just fall over. Standing ovation is an improvement though, as it's been selected to stay more upright, even in that nutrient-rich soil. So if you're really considering doing that, which I definitely think you should, I think it would look beautiful in a pot. Try to use standing ovation. Yeah. So, well, our natural inclination is to feed things. They're in pots and they're not getting nutrients. That's what we do as gardeners and landscapers, but you don't need to do that. Just keep it lean. It's called keep it lean. So that's a really exciting group of plants, little blue stem and big blue stem. They're very exciting, and they're I started out a nursery in 1990. We grew ornamental plants. We grew native plants, and the owner kept saying, "Hey, these things are going to be big someday." And I'm like, I don't know, man. They're, but that was one of our first plants, and now you can hardly keep them in stock. So he was right. We're coming. There's nothing wrong with exotic plants. We're going to get to them. They have a place, but it's not on this side of the table is what it is. But please keep them in mind. Big blue stem, little blue stem, standing ovation. Blackhawks is really a nice new variety of big blue stem. It's got so much color in it.
And they all take the same amount of sun?
Yes, they would prefer full sun.
All of these?
All of these except for, well, this one will take a little bit of shade. It can grow, the original ones I saw were growing under oak trees, so light but not full sun. Panicums, yeah, they're if you think about them, they grow in the prairies, and that's where they're native to. So they really do prefer full sun. There's a couple though that we'll talk about that will take some shade. So this is pink muley grass. Is everyone familiar with that? This is one. If you want color in your yard in the fall, this is one. This in the ground, like next year, if you were to plant this plant, next year this would be like a big pink ball of cotton candy. And there's a white one too. So I prefer the pink one, but there's a white one too. And these things are funny because in the winter, after like January, that head it falls off, it dries and then starts rolling around the yard, and then you have this pink ball rolling around your yard like a tumbleweed. To me, that's kind of funny. But again, color, it only gets 24 inches tall, maybe 30 when it flowers, but I had doing a landscape design for a customer, and he was like, I got this one spot and I just don't know what to put there. And I was, he likes native plants, so I was like, I'll tell you what, and I showed him a picture of this, and he was like, absolutely, 18 of them. I want as many of them as I can get because it's that exciting. You can see it, you can't see it, but I can. There's little seeds on here. It's not really known as a big self-seeder though. It won't self-seed in your garden as much as you think it would. So there's that. Those are then we got, so this little guy looks real sad right now, but he's really not. He's happy. This is purple love grass. And the reason I brought this in here is because it is almost like a little version of this. It gets little purple flowers, little purple pink flowers all over it. So what I like to do is, is when I'm planting, designing things for people, I like to kind of include this in the front of these. It kind of steps down the color. So it creates interest. And you can see this. It's got there's like a, what do they call? An imitator in the natural landscape too, called tridents. It's, at least where I'm from Pennsylvania, and in this time of year, a little bit before this actually, the undisturbed fields have this purple haze all along them. And it's just, you look out and you see nothing but purple. It's that grass. And the problem is it's not really sold in the garden center. They're available, but it's called tridents. And those three grasses are the three that get this like airy plume on them and add color to your landscape. All the grasses, typically, you would have, well, these are all the native grasses on this side. In the native grasses, it's difficult to find it that will take deep shade. They will take some. I've seen this growing under oak trees. They prefer full sun if they can get it. And if you think about it, because they're from the prairies and open meadows, that's what they get. So they've kind of adapted to that, kind of developed themselves to do that. Now I'm getting kind of hidden behind them. We'll talk about this one next, real quick. Although it deserves to be talked about a lot. It's northern sea oats, and I don't think it was on she threw that in. The perennial department manager threw this in. And this is one of the first grasses I learned many years ago. It gets, God, I need a screen. The seed heads, they hang down. They grow up, then they hang down, and they're a bunch of little seeds that are, you can picture this, shaped like that. But this is the grass that gives you sound in the winter. When this gets to moving in the breeze, something about those things, they really sound like winter, like movement. And we talked about this in the beginning of the talk. The one thing that I'm big on with all the plants that I plant in the landscape or using people's designs, it's gotta look good 4 seasons. It can't just look good spring, summer, and fall, and then in winter it looks, because that distracts from your landscape, and it doesn't attract people to look at it or you to look at it. But I'm really big on that. My home landscape actually looks its best in the wintertime. And that's how I designed it. And I have flowering plants in the winter. I have yellow flowers all winter. I have reds and whites and yellows actually. But so that's everything I do. And if you come see more of my talks, I'm always going to talk about plants that look good 4 seasons. The biggest part of what I do is try to get people to understand that part. I've never seen a southern sea oat, so I don't even know if there is one, but this is northern sea oats. And the flowers literally look like oats hanging down. If you've ever been on a farm and saw oats grow, and this looks like that. So far, everything we've talked about so far, these are non-invasive. These will not spread through your yard. You won't be picking them up everywhere. I am going to talk about one grass that's absolutely terrible, and I don't even know that it's in here. I hope not. Yep, we're seeing nothing here that would. Most people, their natural inclination is in the winter when these things start to turn brown, they go out, they grab them, and they cut them down, and you look at these stumps in the ground that used to be your grasses. And that's actually the worst thing you can do because you're missing out on one entire season of beauty. So I'm going to keep emphasizing that until We get it. Not you get it. You'll get it because you'll hear me say it 60 times today. But as a landscape community, we need to understand that the landscape beauty doesn't end in the fall. Fall's arguably the most beautiful time in the landscape. We'd all probably agree on that. Winter's not far behind it, really. So now these are panicums. People call them switchgrass. And there's a lot of panicums that have been introduced into the market now. And the reason that is because of how tough they are. These are another one. These won't flop like I was talking about that one in that lean soil, but these everything here prefers crappy lean soil. There's no other way to describe it. They do not want you putting leaf compost, and they're happy with that, but you're not gonna, they would love you if you just didn't do it. So the panicum, do you have a question?
I was going to ask about the trimming, so you never cut them back?
No, you do. After the winter, you do need to cut them back. And so I tell this story, but I wonder if I really should or not. Because it's weird, I think. The more I think about it, it's weird. Every year, coming from Pennsylvania, grew up in the middle of like the Pennsylvania prairie, if there is such a thing. No one around us. And I had grasses, you know, I planted everything at my parents' house when I was younger. And this was, this is going to sound weird, please don't think I'm too weird, but Christmas morning when we would go to my parents after I got married, moved out, it was a tradition to go out, we would burn the grasses at Christmas time. So grasses particularly are a plant family that lives side by side with fire. They need it on the prairie. The prairies are on fire a lot. There's always a prairie fire or something. That's important to the development of grasses. So it was easier for me just to go, you know, burn them down to the ground, and that did not damage them at all. They're completely used to that in their natural environment. The other option is to take a string, tie it around the bottom, prune it, and then you can easily carry it to the compost heap or wherever you want to take them. But it's important that if that doesn't show the resilience of the natural native grasses, that they thrive on fire. There's not just grasses, but pines, for example, and cedars. They really need fire to germinate when they set seed. So it's important to do. I'm not suggesting you go out and burn your grasses down after Christmas. But it's an easy way to do it if you have the space and you live not near anyone. But your neighbors will think you're crazy if you do it with them around. But you'll come back and thank me if you leave your grasses up in the wintertime. You'll be like, I'm so glad I did that. You're right. The movement, grasses, they provide color, they provide movement in the landscape, and they provide sound. Like a butterfly bush doesn't do that. It provides color, but no movement or sound. These have a lot of interest in the landscape. So panicums, they're tough. The one thing I want to mention with at least these two, make sure you put them where you want them, because digging these out and moving them later is not a good thing. It's like a tree trunk down there after. It's hard to move them once you get them. You can, if you do it at least 2 years after you plant, you can dig them up and divide them. They're happy to be divided. They don't mind that at all. And again, it kind of goes back to their natural habitat on the prairie. When we broke soil and started tilling up the prairie, these were cut up by plows and they just moved. An interesting thing about this, I don't know if you all know about a lot of farmers are starting to grow this now, because this can be used as a fuel source they'll burn it, they'll harvest it, burn it to make, well, a lot of people are using it. There's greenhouse ranges that are using panicums to create heat for the greenhouses. There's a lot going on with these. Grasses are... I'm sorry?
These are both switch grasses?
Yes, so this is probably Cheyenne Skies. This is Shenandoah. Cheyenne Skies and Shenandoah are red. they will provide, so you can see it's starting to turn red. So in the fall, they get kind of a red color to it. This is probably heavy metal. This is heavy metal. So you can see how it's blue, you know. Do you see the blue? I see the blue. Or do you see green?
I see green.
I see blue. There's bluer cultivars too. Dewey Blue is called one. It was found and selected in Dewey Beach. These are, again, they're native to this region. So Shenandoah, obviously. They're good, and they flower this time of year. It's underwhelming right now in the pot, but when you have a fully developed clump of this, this is quite fetching. Fetching.
Retention.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And there are other ones too.
Bioretention, like rain garden.
Yeah, they're absolutely. These are rain garden plants, bioretention basins on a commercial level. They have no problem. The panicum is one that actually will grow in the upland where there's very little water, and it'll grow in a rain garden where it's inundated with water. And there's others too. Trying to think of some other. There's so many native grasses because they got real popular for a while, then they kind of fell. I don't know why. And now they're back. You know, people are starting to look at them again and going, oh, okay, I want those. You do need some space with like this one and this one. These get 6 feet tall. They're not short. This one gets a little shorter, but heavy metal's every bit of 6 foot tall when it's getting ready to flower. And when the flowers come, it could even be a little taller. But yeah, for bioretention, grasses are your key. They're going to love you for putting them there. So that's kind of the native part of this. Does anyone want to talk about native grasses anymore? I'm happy to talk about it.
How tall do the sea oaks get?
How tall? About 3 feet. Yeah, it's not a tall grass, 30, 36 inches.
2 questions about cutting them down. What happens if you don't cut them down? And then, do you cut them down like right before the new season starts to come out?
That's a good question. So if you don't cut them down, nothing really happens other than you now have 6 foot of dried. Are you talking about like in the natural, like if you were to leave them in the bioretention basin?
Yeah, or even in ornamental.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's no steadfast rule that says these need to be cut back. They don't.
Do they grow as well?
Will they grow as well? Absolutely. It's more of an aesthetics thing, really, is what it comes down to. So a lot of grasses don't get cut. They don't get cut down in nature, but the problem is you're going to have dry grass here, brown, and you're going to really wait for that grass to pop up above it. That's a real hot topic. Like there's people it's completely polarized. You know, there's people that are like, no non-natives, and then there's people that are like, oh, it's okay, you can plant whatever. I want to be clear with my stance on that. Does everyone know Nandina? Nandina is highly invasive, right? I grow Nandina at my house, and I'm a responsible gardener. I don't allow it to set red berries. I go cut the flowers off. I enjoy the flowers, and I want to see them. But as soon as that's done, I go remove all the flowers. Now I don't have Nandina berries in my garden. They're nice. Has everyone heard all the birds that died eating Nandinas? Have you ever heard this story? So the berries themselves, those birds had actually gorged themselves on the berries. They ate more than a human would eat. I mean, and that's what happened there. They did some, bird autopsies and found that their stomachs had so many Nandina berries in it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you can have things like Nandina in your garden if you're responsible and you know what you have to do to have those things. I have Nandina in my garden. I sometimes take some heat from people that come and see it, but I explain to them that you won't see any Nandina berries in my garden because I am responsible. I live on the Eastern Shore on Kent Island, and they would take over there really because of the environment we have. But let's get back to the grasses, because that's another talk I could have, native versus non-native and how to be a responsible plant grower. Pennisetum. This is pennisetum, okay? And it's, they call it fountain grass. And I think these might be both the same. Pennisetum, on its own, this is where we now go this way. Most pennisetum plants are not invasive. There is one, and I'm going to talk about it. And the only reason I'm really going to harp on it is because when I drive to work in the late summer, fall right now, and there's more dew, there's one of these called Pennisetum mudri. Has anyone ever heard of that one? It's black fountain grass. These are black, and it is the most invasive plant I've ever come across in my life. Driving down Route 8 where I live, both sides of the road, there's just black Pennisetum flower heads the whole way down Route 8. And I mean, no one put them there. They came there naturally, but it's invasive. And when we talk about invasive plants, we don't hate them because they're ugly. It's quite beautiful with the black flower heads all on the road, but the problem is they're pushing out the native species. So my ride to Route 8 on Route 8 in the morning would be full of this. But because pennisetums, that particular pennisetum is more aggressive, it has wiped these out. It is just, these can't compete with that. That's the problem. It really comes down to the competition from these things. And you could say that about, there's a lot of plants, you probably all don't remember, there was a plant called Lithorum. It hit the garden centers. It was the most exciting thing. It had flowers all over the place, all kinds of colors, pinks, purples. Turns out it was really invasive, and it really started to take over the wetlands. So they stopped selling it, and you can't grow it now. The problem is it's already out there. You know what I mean? People already have it. So if you have it, it's yours. Phragmites was another one. It's a grass-like plant. It's a reed. Everyone loved it, but now it's 8 feet out into the water, all on the coastline. It's Phragmites. It's just taken over. So I want to talk about that because it's important for everyone to know that when you're talking about invasive plants, don't call the whole family invasive. Okay, you have to understand which ones you're dealing with. You can still buy Pennisetum mudri. And like I do with my Nandinas, you could remove the flower heads, but I don't feel like you could do that responsibly with grasses, because when would you do it? And I mean, these things will fly miles once they come off. That thing will get airborne. So I don't know how you could do that. How you could say, well, I'm a responsible gardener, I removed the seed heads. I don't think that's possible with some of these grasses. But, so we have, this is probably Hamlin. Yeah, so this is Hamlin. It's safe, everyone grows it. One of the, when we get to the miscanthus, there's two different types of miscanthus. There's early flowering and late flowering. The early flowering ones are really the invasive types. The late flowered ones, they flower so late that the cold kills the seed before it becomes viable. So I guess what I'm trying to say there is don't write off an entire group of plants because of one. Do your research and know which ones you're planting. And you can enjoy these. There's a couple good, there's like Little Bunny now, well, it's been around forever, but it only gets like this tall. Where you need that, sometimes you need those grasses in your landscape, that height. You can use them. It really would look a lot like that without flowers on it. So try to find a native alternative, but if you can't, I I'm not here to tell you that you can't use non-native plants. This is Cassian. Cassian's a little taller than Hamlin. You can see that here. It's, you know, they're...
These are invasive?
These are not.
They're not.
Mudry, though, is. I think it's like a lock or something somewhere, and maybe in Scotland. But it's, the flowers are beautiful. It's a beautiful plant. That's why people can't stop using it, because it is beautiful. But it's not, you shouldn't use it. They have out, there's another grass that was called Japanese bloodgrass, Imperata. You can't buy that now. You plant one, I could plant one here, and in 2 years the whole table's covered with them. They're red, it's beautiful. Can't get it anymore, although I did see a nursery selling it. So I'm not sure what they did. You know, the state really dictates what we can and can't sell, like barberry. If you try to buy a barberry here, there's a sign out there that warns you, like, these are tier 2 invasives. Mudry's a tier 1. If you get it and plant it, it's going everywhere. Barberry is one that you can control, and there are sterile varieties of plants. Now, Nandina, there's a few that they've now bred that don't flower. But we're here to talk about grasses, not Nandina. So these are good. They're low growing, 18 inches, 24 inches tops. Cassian might get to 30. A lot of the nuts, I was going to say a lot of these came out of European breeding programs, but a lot of our prairie grasses, the Dutch are a lot better at breeding and introducing plants to us. So what they've done is they've taken our native prairie plants, taken them over to Holland and all through Europe, and then bred them, and then they sell them back to us, because they really, a lot of those new echinaceas you're seeing, they're all from Dutch breeding programs. They're really good at taking our stuff and then making it better. So they did a lot of work with pennisedums, and there's one called Piglet that's really short and it gets red. There's a lot of varieties. So this is, I wish they'd have brought me a better Japanese, this is Japanese forest grass. And I didn't really give this a lot of consideration in the landscape, and then it kind of 3 years ago, I saw it planted, and it was underplanted under a bunch of wood. It grows in the woodland, so this is one that'll take shade, and it's really cool, and it's not aggressive, so it doesn't spread like you think it would. So this one's safe. There's one, I wish they'd have brought me all gold or areola. They're yellow, golden, a nice, not obnoxious like chartreuse yellow, green, but buttery yellow, really nice. Here's one, so this is Calamagrostis. Oh, okay, warm season, warm season, warm season, warm season, warm season. I don't know that that even has a season, but Calamagrostis. This to me is so close to its cousin, Calamagrostis canadensis, which is native, this used to be called a native plant, now it's not. So this is Calamagrostis Carl Forrester. It's a cool season grass, so what happens in the early spring, this thing starts growing a lot before anything does, and then kind of stops in the summer. It kind of takes a break and almost goes summer dormant. Some plants go summer dormant. This almost does, and then flowers in the fall, early fall, because it's cool season, so it's doing its thing again. It's green. It's just green. That's the problem with it. There's one called Calamagrostis overdam, is an older variety, but it's variegated, so it's white. It's got a lot of color to it. Adds a lot of color. It's white and green. It's beautiful. Now, here's where we run into our problems. This one's probably Carly Rose. That's another pennisedum. Yeah, Carly Rose. So it gets taller. Hamlin's the shortest, Cassian's the middle, Carly Rose is the big one. It's kind of cool. It gets you can almost see the pink color there, but it's not. This one's like borderline. It's when it starts to set its seed really early like that. That's when you have to worry because it has enough time to germinate in the fall in the ground. So you do have to. That one's borderline, but I wanted to show you the height difference. And then, so we have Carl Forrester. I wish we had Overdam. It's an old variety, and the older varieties are starting to come back now. So what's old is new, they say. That's true in a lot of plant material. There's one called shade grasses. Someone asked me about shade grasses. There's a Calamagrostis called Calamagrostis brachiotricha. Doesn't have like a nice fancy name, but it grows in the shade. So it's an ornamental grass that will take the shade. By any means, no worries.
How tall does it get?
3.5 feet, 4. One of the main differences between our native grasses and, I said these like lean soil. These don't mind growing in pots, fertilized, and growing in nutrient-rich soil. That doesn't bother them at all. So these two will take shade, Japanese forest grass, of course, and Calamagrostis brachiotricha, which would be there if we had it. And then, so these are miscanthus. And they're the ones that everyone says, well, they're so invasive, we shouldn't grow them. Not just another, but another panicum. See how upright that is? That's upright. That's north wind, so it stands straight up. They selected it because it stands straight up, and it'll even, some of these will fall down from heavy winds in the winter. That will not. You can't knock that down for some reason. But it's a good one. It's a new variety. And then these guys, we got to talk about miscanthus really, because I love them. I do. This is Gracilis. This may be one of the most beautiful grasses that exists. When it's a full-size clump, it goes up and then spreads out like this, and it's one of the most beautiful grasses that exists today. It really is. Non-invasive, warm season. And if it bothers you to have these in your landscape, do what I do with the Nandinas and cut the flowers off. It can be done. It's a lot, it's work, but that one is worth it. If you buy no other miscanthus, that one's it. There's so many. So this is Morning Light. And just in the title of the plant, remember I talked about the window, you're looking out in the wintertime and everything's beautiful. Try and have an east-facing window so that you can see this in the morning. Because when the sun's coming up behind this thing and there's frost on it, it's winter, there's nothing more beautiful than this thing. That's why they call it Morning Light. There's something about it in the morning. I'm sure it would work in the evening too. They could call it Evening Light really if they wanted to, but Morning Light.
What's a common name for those?
How many what?
What's a common name?
Maiden grass, I believe they call them. We got to talk about these because these are what happens if you just assume a whole entire plant family is a bad plant family. This happens. People don't want to use them, they don't want to sell them, but there's very few of these that are actually invasive. And the ones that are invasive, they've kind of stopped growing because there's so many of these available. So you can kind of feel safe knowing that the ones that you can still buy are safe for the environment. And don't write them off, don't give up on them, they're so beautiful. They get, occasionally they'll get rust, and I see it here. It discolors the stems. it looks like rust. It looks like the plant has rust. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It really doesn't kill them. It's not. In the summer, cool season grasses sleep. They're awake and they're green, but they don't expect things to happen. And that's more of a, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that because it can be confusing because you think they're not there. But they are, they're just kind of sleeping. So these, they're flowering now, and they'll go to sleep early, panicums will. And in the spring, they wake up late. They like to grow in the hot summer. So that's what they really need, that heat. There's some shrubs, they're escaping me right now, but they're the same way. People are like, oh, it's dead. No, it's not. And then 2 weeks later, it starts to leaf out. And generally, most of the miscanthus is a warm season grass as well, but like penniseedums are cool season, calabrostis, which I sent them a list of what I wanted, and then they wanted a couple things made. This is dwarf pampas grass. Everybody's got them here. There's pink and white. This is humilla, so it's a white. But I mean, everyone's got them. It's just another example of an ornamental grass that they've gotten better at breeding hardiness into things. 20 years ago, we could have never had pampas grass this far north, but now we can. There's a few of them too. There's one called Jet Stream that's really hard. It could probably go up one zone above us. So that's kind of that's a really good cross section of grasses, I think. I asked for, does anyone know fescue Elijah blue, the little powder blue grass? I asked me around that, but it's another one. It's a weird grass because it's a cool season grass. In the spring, it's beautiful. Sometimes in the summer, it can get a little ugly. It kind of turns brown and it'll melt. They call that melting in the summer. If the moisture and the heat just can't handle it. And then in the fall, it'll generally come back. But you just have to know that and design your garden around that.